This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here with your latest Meteo Mundo forecast. And friends, there is a lot to talk about on this Friday, October the 27th. Several areas of the Caribbean could have high impact weather events over the next 5 days. Tropical storm Tammy is back just east of Bermuda. The flood threat continues to rise for portions of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and we have a new area of potential tropical development in the southern Caribbean. That's where we'll begin this forecast off, friends. And again, thank you, Meteo Mundo family, for liking this video. We appreciate it. Let's get into it. There's a lot to unpack here as we go through this forecast. So we'll start off with a broad area of disturbed weather just off the Central American coastline, all right? It's just disorganized showers and storms at this point in time, but the Hurricane Center is highlighting at least the potential for slow development over the weekend and early next week as this broad shower and thunderstorm complex drifts up to the north. But I want you to notice that one of the areas that is in that yellow development area is our friends in Jamaica. So Jamaica will be keeping a close eye on you for this potential disturbance to develop into something tropical as it moves your way again late weekend, early into next week, and just kind of shaving portions of the Cayman Islands there. But I'll show you the GFS model here, which kind of keeps it a little bit farther away from the Cayman Islands. But again, in this area, we have a new area of potential tropical development. So I want to first of all show you kind of the wide perspective of the GFS model, and then we'll kind of get into, the actual what's happening there potentially for Jamaica. I just want you to notice there's just an abundant amount of moisture in play. And that's going to be a big story for some of the excessive rainfall potential in some of the other islands as well. But again, on the GFS model, it is wrapping up a very small, fairly weak system out of that broad area of showers and storms right now. But we can clearly see that right there on the GFS model, kind of swinging through somewhere near Jamaica. Again, I don't want to focus on one area at this point in time. It's one of, one of the solutions, if you will, and it's certainly one of the first model runs, but you can clearly see it on the GFS model, a small disturbance kind of moving right up, maybe just east or on the eastern side of the island. But again, I don't want to focus on one area as of yet, but just again, for our friends in Jamaica, something up you can be keeping a close eye on. You're looking at the time frame here. This is going to be kind of through Monday, the 30th. You can see that kind of swinging right by your area here. Now we can take a look at the winds as well. And again, they're not going to be significant as of yet, but it's just something to note that, on the GFS model, we are picking up a little bit of a spin up here as it moves up towards your way. And again, I don't want to focus on this exact track. There's nothing from the Hurricane Center as of yet, but for informational purposes, the GFS model does bring in at least a weak disturbance or a weak system in your way. Don't even want to talk about depression or storm as of yet. But I will say regardless of whether that's going to be developing or not, the rainfall will obviously be going up in your area with a surge of tropical moisture from the south. So regardless of development for our friends in Jamaica, you're going to get higher rain chances at least Sunday and into Monday. So we'll be watching that very closely for you. Now, to other areas that could really get a lot of rain, and this is what we talked about yesterday, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So looking at that area, again, going to loop this again. We have a wave moving through the Eastern Caribbean, combining with a trough that's basically already there. The bottom line is there is an abundant amount of tropical moisture. The atmosphere is like a wet sponge, and we're going to be efficiently squeezing that out. So there is the opportunity for some excessive rainfall in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands beginning later today through at least early in the week. And because of that, the National Weather Service in San Juan has already issued a flood watch for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands starting at 2 p.m. this afternoon through at least Monday morning, and I'll give you the details on that coming up. But again, just look at all of that rain developing, and that's going to increase the flood threat. And this includes the British Virgin Islands as well. So we're going to see certainly the opportunity for excessive rainfall, especially on the eastern and the southern sides of the island, some interior sections of Puerto Rico, and then the U.S. and British Virgin Islands as well. Obviously for the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John, and then the islands just off of Puerto Rico, so from Fajardo towards Culebra and Esperanza. Now, I want you to notice on this, and I'm going to switch over to the total precipitation product, that one of the things to note is that this moisture axis of heaviest rain is elongated in a very north to south fashion, all right? So let's say this moisture sets up just 30 miles off towards the east. Some of that heaviest rain could actually avoid the Virgin Islands and fall in between the Virgin Islands and portions of the Northern Leeward Islands. And I'll have the rest of the forecast for the Lesser Antilles coming up as well. But we have to focus on, again, the excessive rainfall flooding threat for our friends in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands here over the next 5 days. So let's take a look at what the GFS model is painting on as rainfall as we get into early on. Let's go early on. We'll do Halloween. We'll do early to late on Tuesday. You're looking at 8, potentially 9, 10 inches of rain for the British Virgin Islands, again towards road towns, 6, 7. Then as you get towards, sorry about that, slipped off the map here. I'll get it back. There we go. Sometimes the Zoom has a mind of its own. But again, you're looking at St. Thomas and St. John. Again, don't focus on one particular number, but just note what the model is saying is a potential in these areas. And I can actually, if I click that, they'll actually stay. So you can just see again what we're looking at here as some of these rainfall totals through the Virgin Islands. It's not going to be as much right now on this model through Puerto Rico, but still potential for excessive rainfall in those areas as well. So let me clear that off, and I just did that. So I want to talk about the flood watch that's currently in effect. Now, again, this is from the National Weather Service office in San Juan. It is for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands starting at 2 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time on this Friday through at least Monday morning. And the problem is that some of the models keep this excessive rainfall going well into next week as well. So again, I told you not to focus on one number. The overall kind of average, if you will, from the Weather Service is 3 to 6 inches of rain, locally up to 8 inches. And so the impacts would be flooding of urban areas, of roads, of streams. Some rivers could go over their banks, and then mudslides in some of the higher terrain is possible. Again, this is for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. For the British Virgin Islands, I didn't see a flood statement in your area as of yet, but I urge you to check in with your local officials and your local government for any local flood statements or impacts in your area. Again, I'm just passing along the information that I've seen, but it's up to you. It's your responsibility to make sure you keep a very close eye on what your local officials are telling you. So again, that flood watch is in effect for a very good reason. Again, looking at the potential for the heavier rainfall, again, I'm just going to zoom out and we'll just look at this over the next 5 days. And you can just see all of that rain continuing to drift across the islands, especially over the weekend. Now, hopefully this moisture axis moves off towards the west and we begin to dry out starting on Tuesday. But some of the models keep this rain train going, this tropical moisture just sticking around the area. So the potential for excessive rainfall, I do believe, will stick around this area again, potentially through mid-week. We're just gonna have to really keep a close eye on it for you. Now, for the Lesser Antilles, from Anguilla towards St. Kitts and Nevis and Montserrat, we're going to get some heavier rain potential there. It's not going to be as excessive as areas off towards your west. We'll monitor the situation for you, but we could see a few inches of rain fall in this area. You get back down towards, let's say, Martinique and Barbados, it gets just a little bit more scattered in general the farther south that you go. Same thing for Grenada and Trinidad and Tobago. Sure, there's going to be some rain. It'll be kind of more progressive, meaning it's not going to be sitting in one area as of long. So I'm not as concerned about any of the rain threat and the more rain potential for the rest of the Leeward and the Windward Islands. But we can certainly take a look here at the total precipitation on the GFS model for those areas. Now, again, it's going to rain. We're going to get some wet weather into the area, but just notice again the maximums here, the higher rainfall totals in those peaches and those yellows should stay west of the rest of the islands. But we'll take a look at those rainfall totals in some of those areas as well. So for, let me switch over, make sure I've got the probe tool as they call it. So for Anguilla, 3 inches of rain, Montserrat, maybe 2.5, 3 inches of rain, Martinique about 2 to 4, or 2 to 3, excuse me. Then as you get towards Barbados and then down towards Trinidad and Tobago, it's going to get a little bit lower, but that's still some decent rainfall over the next 5 days of around 2 to 3 inches of rain through the island chain. All right, let's get back over to the reflectivity product here. Still got a lot to talk about for us here. I want to switch over now to the ABC Islands for our friends in Abaco. Aruba and Bonaire and Curacao. Throw that into motion for you. We're not going to get the excessive rainfall potential here that what we had in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Want to just mention again, we're going to cover everyone, but this will be more scattered rain than anything else. For the Dominican Republic, I know you guys are close, including Haiti there in the island of Hispaniola. It's the same scenario, at least at this point in time. We're keeping the moisture axis just east of you. So the heavy rain falls through Puerto Rico. We're going to get some showers developing across the island. At this point in time, it doesn't look to be excessive, but what could happen is by mid next week, some of this heavier rain begins to shift off towards the west. So we'll have to be watching your area as well. All right, that's the latest on the potential heavier rainfall in those areas. I've got to also mention what's going on with Tammy. And when I'm looking down, there's so much to talk about. I want to make sure I don't forget anything, so I kind of have a rundown. So looking at Tammy, again, it has become a tropical storm again. That's crazy, but it is. So when I put the track back on from the Hurricane Center, you're going to see it has Tammy moving back off towards the east. That is good news for our friends in Bermuda because it keeps the core of Tammy away. Winds right now are well into tropical storm strength at this point in time. So again, it's going to stay a tropical storm. It's going to move back off towards the east, and eventually it's going to die. But kicking up the surf and sea conditions across the island, absolutely. We can take a look at Tammy's rain here. I'll switch on over to that product. Again, this is the GFS model. We'll swing it here over the next 5 days. And you can see, again, the GFS model has some rain around early in the period and then goes along with the agreement of the Hurricane Center and drifts things back. Now, there's more moisture to talk about with a front and a trough coming off the U.S. the East Coast here, but that's not going to be tropical in nature. Again, what is left over of Tammy is right here, and you can see it beginning to drift off to the east and eventually southeast, never really becoming anything strong. We can take a look at the wind field out of Tammy on the GFS model, and again, it's wrapped up, which is why it's back to a tropical storm. I mean, it's tight right now, but it is forecast to weaken and eventually finally fade away. Tammy's been so long lived here, again, just east of Bermuda, then swinging back towards the south and to the east and dying. Again, what is happening off towards the west here in Bermuda, that's not anything tropical. That's just a front coming off of a trough, if you will, coming off of the United States East Coast. The other area I want to highlight here real quickly is going to be the Bahamas. I want to switch over to the Bahamas right now and just mention what's going to be happening in that area. I want to actually switch to a high resolution model here because I want to talk about, we're going to get some wind driven rain in the Bahamas over the next couple days. If you live in this area, you know what I'm talking about. We've had some pretty strong east to northeast winds. Just want to show you for our friends in Freeport and Marsh Harbor and Nassau and Arthurstown and Walker's Key that we're going to see more rain coming in as we get towards the end of the weekend. All right, you can see all of that moisture coming in. Now, the interesting thing, I'm going to show you another model coming up, is this more than likely is not going to be anything in tropical in nature. It's kind of part of that moisture that's over Puerto Rico that'll be moving up to the north and to the west. But again, late into Sunday and early on Monday, looks like we're going to get more rain for the Bahamas. I'll show you the longer model here on the GFS and take it out 5 days as well. Throw that into motion and you'll see the longer range GFS doesn't have as much rain coming in late into the period here. But when I switch over to the NAM model, and this is the one I really wanted to show for the Bahamas, and we'll take a look at this, it's not going to be something that's wrapped up, meaning that I'll show you the wind field here, but take a look at this slug of moisture that the NAM model is trying to throw, mainly just east of the islands, but it could sneak into the northwest side of the islands as we head towards the 30th and the 31st, and then the early part of November. And again, you can kind of just see it's that moisture coming out of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and moving up north and west. Now, looking at the wind out of this, and again, I'll throw that into motion, it does, again, have a bit of wind with it. This is a very interesting solution right now only on the NAM model, but you can see this sneaking up. The GFS had nothing, and this NAM model has a little bit of strengthening of some winds there, just kind of east of the islands as we get too early to midweek. This is why I mentioned, friends, there is a lot going on in the tropics. So let us kind of go over things one more time for us here. And I think the best way to do that is I'm going to go back over to the GFS model, this wide shot. I'm going to throw it into motion over the next 5 days, and we'll go over again all that's happening across the area. Okay, for the Southern Caribbean, potential tropical development moving north, potentially near Jamaica late weekend and into early next week. Right now, a weaker system, but we'll be monitoring that. Tammy has returned. It's east of Bermuda, moving off towards the east as well. The big rain threat is going to be for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Already a flood watch for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands at least through Monday. 3 to 6 inches of rain, locally up to 8 inches. Expect wet weather through the rest of the Lesser Antilles as well. Again, for the British Virgin Islands, check in with your local government. You have the opportunity for some excessive rainfall as well. And then some of this moisture driving into the Bahamas early to mid next week. And depending on the model, potentially trying to wrap up into something that has some wind to go along with it. So a lot to monitor, friends, through the weekend and into the early part of next week. We'll keep you updated right here at Meteo Mundo. Thank you so much for liking the video. And of course, if you want the latest forecast and keep up to date in your area, make sure you subscribe. Always love to hear from you as well. Drop it in the comment section below. You got a specific question about the forecast. We're happy to answer that for you as well. We'll take a deep breath and we'll see you soon right here at Meteo Mundo. Have a great day, friends.